Welcome back, I'm Tedward, and today, thanks to Bond Group in Waltham, Massachusetts, we're mixing it up a little bit with a big diesel truck. This is a 1997 Ford F-350 with a 7.3 liter Powerstroke diesel. It has a big old Garrett turbo, dually wheels in the back, and a 5-speed manual transmission. So this is actually really fun to drive if you're into that sort of thing. Pretty bare bones in terms of what it does, but it'll tow 12,500 pounds, and despite its enormous displacement and low revving diesel, as it would, it only makes like 225 horsepower, but 450 pound-feet of torque. This one does have a little tuner box inside of it though, and no one told me what it does, but I've got a feeling it's gonna get a little torqueier if we tune it up. So take a look around. First, we've got this really cool bed on the back of this. It looks very aftermarket, and I don't know a whole lot about it, so maybe you can tell me if you know, but I'm absolutely digging the big old International mud flaps back here, and this thing has been kept in pretty pristine condition. It's got about 110 or 120,000 miles on it, and under here, you know, you can get right in there and check out the frame. Little brown, but no like, you know, scary rust or anything. This is definitely a good place to start. You can probably put another 300,000 miles on this without much problem. You have two fuel fillers over here because you have a front and rear tank. So hopefully you can put enough diesel for the end of the world in this thing. I can't imagine how painful that would be at the pump. And then obviously you've got a tow hitch back there, but if you want to do the gooseneck thing, you've got a greased up, lubed up knob ready to go for you. So that's good to go. And I guess to make sure things don't fall off, there's some wood over here. I don't know what exactly you're supposed to do with this space. I mean, I guess you could tie some things down, or for the sake of towing, you could do your gooseneck trailer thing. Obviously having a large bed opens up lots of possibilities, but I mean, this isn't like an off-roader. This is more of like a tow rig or a landscaping rig. So you'd have to figure out how you want to utilize this space. Up over the top, we've got our cool cab lights because of the size. Very nice and intimidating on the rides home at night. And under here, you can see the MBRP exhaust, which I assume is aftermarket, not fully sure, but the way this looks doesn't look like it came from Ford. Inside, we've got some room for my stuff, but very bare bones and simple. It's one big bench, so this moves as a solid piece. Very cool. And then got a little armrest, but that's it. Those are the creature comforts. There's not a cup holder in sight, so you know, hold your own drink or shove it down here. Let's take a look under the hood. To open the hood, we pop that, and then we've got this little guy. We just got to push it off to the left, and up she goes on big springs on either side. And then there it is, a big old 7.3 liter turbo diesel. And hopefully you wouldn't have to do much work in here, because one of the benefits of having a giant diesel is just that they run. They just run and run and run and run. They're thirsty for sure, but they're going to have loads of torque, and you're not going to have to do too much. They certainly smell, and I'm going to have to wash my clothes after driving this today. But you can see our big Garrett turbo back there doing all the work to make it whistle and make some cool sounds along the way. So enough about that. Let's just jump in and go for a drive, because this thing is just a joy to be behind the wheel. So first, let's get it into position. For me, I'm a little shorter than everybody else, so I typically ride a little closer, but you can tell that this all moves as one piece. So if you got a tall friend, but you're the short driver, well, too bad to them, because you're gonna need to reach these pedals, because you're gonna wanna get into that clutch. To get it started, we've got our key and our ignition, very simple stuff. When you do release the key from the ignition though, you've gotta press this little button to get it out. So we're gonna go to accessory. We're gonna see our glow plugs warming up. This is pretty warm already, so that light's not gonna last for long, but wait to start, and it's out. We're good to go. We're in neutral. Can clutch in. And there we have it. Got about a 3,600 RPM red line around that. And then here's our little DP tuner guy, which, you know, we'll play with it a little bit, but I do think it adds a bit of torque to the equation. We'll release our parking brake, buckle up our color match seatbelt, which is actually kind of cool. And man, even these little seatbelt receivers are bringing back some memories. We're going to be running in rear wheel drive, 2 high. We do have a 2-speed transfer case, so if you do need to get into 4 low for whatever reason, you can do that. You've got to still go ahead and twist the little worn hub locks onto the axles up front. And then over here, you've got a trailer brake if you were towing. So starting first, even though first is like practically a crawl gear, don't even add throttle, I'll get in a second. So it has a 5-speed manual, but it doesn't say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It says 1, 2, 3, 4, and overdrive. So I assume that's just from like the old marketing days of fuel efficiency in America, where you'd have that even on your automatic transmissions. You'd have an overdrive, a drive, then 3, 2, 1. So, you know, it's just interesting to see that instead of being a 5th gear, it says overdrive. I mean, I know 5th gear is typically an overdrive, but there it is. It is pretty easy to drive though. This is just absolutely wonderful. You've got torque for days, and 450 pound-feet doesn't sound like a lot, but it is certainly plenty. I mean, we're not towing anything right now, so I can't say that for sure, but I just know that I'm having to use very little throttle in my inputs. Bouncy ride. You get the sensation that this is designed for pretty hefty payload and towing. So when it's unladen, yeah, you're going to be skipping down the road just a little bit. Let's tune this up to, let's say, 3, just to see what that's about. feels a little faster. Get around this fella and try not to roll coal into him. It's just not a nice thing to do. Ticks a lot of boxes because I love a big pickup truck, I love a big diesel, and I love a manual gearbox, and it all comes together in a really nice cohesive way because this is easy to drive and I feel completely entertained while I'm driving it. I'm probably sucking down a ton of fuel. This cannot be an efficient way to mobilize yourself unless you're using it for work, but I am just having a ball. I think there's really something to this culture of enjoying these things, but like I also understand that like I don't need to drive the biggest thing on the road. That can be kind of a pain. Very little weight to the steering, but it's hydraulically operated, so I can feel what's going on. It's just that I'm not getting like a ton of texture. It's just that I know when it's starting to, you know, add a little bit of force back to me in the corner. Pretty responsive engine, honestly. Gave a little double pump on that rev match and it took both instantaneously. Bit of lag as to be expected, but pretty usable. Even at 7.3 liters, this is less than half the displacement of the Freightliner Cascadia chassis that we drive for grid life. We tow race cars, my friends' race cars, out to different races for a circuit, and we've been driving this giant truck, this enormous Freightliner, and it's got a 15.6 liter Detroit diesel in it. I love that truck, but I can't drive it all the time because it's kind of, you know, specified for events. But it's weird because this has given me that little diesel fix that I needed. I'm probably not going to drive that Freightliner for another, 3 to 6 months until the next race. It's going to go away for the winter. But having something like this would be really enjoyable to kind of scratch that itch of that diesel vibe. I really am oddly comforted by the sounds of these things. I think a lot of people think they're obnoxious, but to me it's like ultra soothing to hear this thing idling. fairly high revs for highway speeds, honestly. That's only 60, 65, yeah, that's 62 miles an hour, right, like 2,500 RPM. So even with that overdrive, feels like she's turning quite a few revs. Loads of visibility though with this kind of cab. Done a terrible job with that mirror. This is what frustrates me with trucks like this sometimes, is that like I'm really bad with a manual mirror. I'll play with it a little bit and eventually I'm like, all right, forget it. I'm just gonna use, you know, the windows, I suppose. Not ideal, not the safest, but heck, half of the cars I drive don't have any mirrors, so. I love that juicy low-end torque of a diesel, though. I mean, you could pull out of a hole at, like, idle from this thing. I mean, we could pretty much start in fourth or fifth, and it would still go without a whole lot of trouble. But I'm mostly just starting in second, because first gear is fairly useless unless you were trying to pull a stump. If you look at the fuel gauge, it looks like we've already consumed a quarter tank of gas, but I have my switch set to front. So if I set that to rear, you'll see that climb up to full because that rear tank is full. What I don't know, and maybe you can tell me in the comments, is it actually switching the feed between the two tanks, or is that just so I can tell how full each tank is and it's consuming one before the other? I genuinely don't know, but that's pretty neat. So I think that's going to do it for me in this 97 F-350 with the 7.3 liter turbo diesel. I really like this thing. This is charming as heck. I fully understand why you can have a lot of fun even with your work vehicles. And, you know, I just pulled into a kind of bougie office park. I'm going to say I'm the only one with one of these here. So let's mosey back to Bond Group. Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one. This little tuner box really wakes this engine up. Watch this. We're gonna do a little acceleration in a second here. And I'm just gonna hold my foot right where it is. Now, I don't know what each setting does, but I had my foot in the exact same spot and it just took off. So that could be throttle mapping. It could be genuinely adding a lot more torque to the equation with some other tuning and things. But I can tell you, it does something.